This is Monster Manual MASH. This is the podcast where we get into every entry in the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. We go entry by entry, page by page, line by line. We are digging into what these monsters are doing here. What are their origins in folklore or their origins in the minds of the people that made them up and drew little grade 2 level drawings in the margins of their character sheets? What are the hooks that Wizards of the Coast wants you to feel when you read these things? What are these monsters doing psychologically? What's their niche? What's the idea? What is going on? What is going on? I'm Chris.
And I'm Wes.
That's Wes.
Yeah.
We're going to look at today Fomorians. The Fomorian. What we know about the Fomorian, they are the most hideous and wicked of all giant kind. They are godless, and they have deformed bodies that reflect their vile demeanor. In detail, we learn that they have randomly distributed facial features and that they have differently sized limbs. The word misshapen is used like 3 or 4 times in the first 2 paragraphs. And they often don't get sympathy because they brought their doom upon themselves. I had a little alarm bell. I'm not the most sensitive person in the world, but it is kind of noteworthy that it's hard to get away with a deformed body reflecting a vile interior.
Yeah. That's.
You know? It's a long-standing tradition. This might be something. I know Wizards of the Coast were, I don't know the details, but there was some talk of them re-releasing a lot of material with new sensitivity editing.
Yeah.
Stuff to do with the Vistani. Is that who they were in Curse of Strahd?
Yeah.
And I think orcs were up for revision, and stuff like this might be too, but I don't know. I don't know where the cutoff point is, because it's so, monstrosity is so intertwined with these ideas of appearance reflecting interior.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I feel like there's sort of 2 almost things going on here, right? Because on one hand you have like you mentioned, just the naked concept of deformity equaling evil, or any kind of deviation from a norm, having morally evil qualities to it, you know? There's that going on, but then on the other hand, you do have monsters and strangeness being, one on one. And also, we'll get into it, but the Fomorians valued aesthetic beauty, right? And so this was a curse that was played on them kind of because of that value, but there's still the other the other implications of it.
Yeah, it is a rich thing. So the first paragraph, first bolded line is Fey curse. The elves remember when Fomorians were among the most handsome and brilliant, but they lusted for magic and power. They tried to conquer the Feywild and enslave its inhabitants, but the people of the Feywild, or whatever they are, fought back, and the Fomorians were subjected to a terrible curse. Their giant bodies were warped to reflect the evil in their hearts, and they've plotted vengeance ever since. Kind of interesting that it leaves the details of the curse kind of loose, who gave it to them, what was the definition of the curse.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think if you had the actual definition, or if it was clearly stated that like the Fomorian's evil nature would be like directly translated into some sort of physical deformity. You could have things about like if they are lusting with their eyes, then their eyes get really gross or something. Or
Right. Yeah.
if they are gluttonous, then the head is full of teeth, or teeth come out of them or something.
Just extra mouths all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just more work. You could just make them all kind of gross and fucked up, but you probably don't need it to get into the detail. But if you wanted to spend more time than like one session or whatever on these guys, you might want to come up with something.
Yeah, and it kind of like built into them. There's like this whole idea that they're all a little bit different, right? Like there's a lot of variety in their weirdnesses.
They are giants of the Underdark. They live in eerily beautiful caverns in the Underdark where they have access to water, fish, mushroom forests, and slaves who they will kill and devour if they can't work. Wickedness and depravity are the cornerstones of Fomorian society. Their territories are marked with corpses. They paint cavern walls in blood, and they stitch body parts to make mockeries of the creatures they've killed. I like the discrepancy. I like the contrast of like a mushroom forest. It says that they want access to water. Water is something you might associate with like beauty and reflection. Fish, I don't know. There's like a golem thing going on. Mushroom forest, this kind of like eerie beauty, and then they also are like Texas Chainsaw Massacre activities inside.
Yeah, totally. Like, like I'm imagining, like a lot, like a very like bioluminescent underground kind of like place. And it like all the like and how beautiful that would be. But then there's this road that was like lined with like Frankenstein's monster Roman crucifixes all along the way. Very yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a big display.
Yeah,
they're into displays. I think it's interesting that they mention water and fish.
Yeah, totally.
These are unlike there's almost every intelligent race that lives in the Underdark are depraved, use slaves, are wicked and treacherous. But I don't think any of them mention that they like fish or that they like water.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of makes them relatable.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to hang around water, Can't blame them.
Oh, you know what? I think this is related to Fomorian in myth, actually. But we'll get into it now that I think about it.
Cool.
But yeah, so those are good. You have, I kind of wish they'd get into their like what a Fomorian territory would look like a little bit more.
Yeah,
because I think that's important for the whole aesthetic to kind of go off.
Yeah, and I feel like narrating the lead up to like finding where they all are in the Underdark, like that that's a cool like moment,
Yeah, for sure. And it's I think those are the kinds of things that like a lot of DMs would want help with the most. Is like, okay, you've given me this creature and you've given me its broad points, but like how do you seduce players into like buying into what you're putting out there? So like how do you build the dread? How do you like kind of foreshadow things? How do you paint the picture? And like, yeah, coming across this like ancient Underdark road, but it's covered in like fresh, macabre displays of corpses and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But it's in a beautiful area, and you can have like nice descriptions of. I mean, players will often just like laugh at descriptions, but you can still do it. And if you do it well, then they might get into it.
Yeah, totally. Tell me how to describe a mushroom forest beautifully. Give me help. I like
Just a little bit.
mushrooms. I think they're cool, but like, just give me some cool things to say.
A little bit, yeah.
You're the professional writer. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's the broad points are there, so it's up to you to do it. But
yeah,
I think it's overlooked a little bit. The next paragraph is ruined flesh, evil minds. Their deformities prevent them from hurling rocks or wearing anything more complex than scraps of cloth. So they can't hurl rocks specifically.
Okay.
Which is a weird thing to say, except that this is a holdover from previous editions. And when Fomorians were just simply like underground dwelling giants and did the same things giants did, except they didn't. Their deformities, because they have to be different from surface level giants, prevent them from hurling rocks uniformly, which is like
Yeah.
a trademark special giant move.
It's no one else. No one else can do it. It's just giants. They really cornered the market on throwing rocks.
Yeah.
It's really funny that that's an innate giant trait too. Is like the throwing a rock specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it goes again. I think it's something that goes back to previous editions where it sounds really mundane and kind of silly, but these were the things that separated one creature from another. Or like, how did you know it's a ghoul? It could be any other undead. A ghoul
Yeah.
paralyzes you. That's how
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And like, how do you know that this giant is a giant and not a cyclops? Like, is it throwing a rock at you? Then it's a giant.
Look, you need depth perception to throw rocks. Cyclops aren't going to do that.
Yeah, we've gone over this.
Yeah. 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 Although halflings have like innate skill at throwing pebbles accurately, so there's some precedent in like D&D worlds for like rock throwing being like an innate thing.
Yeah. I wonder if there's an argument you could make that halflings are just like really tiny giants. On the scale of giants, they're the smallest.
Yeah. They just way onto the far end. They're this. Yeah.
They also have Fomorians also have enhanced perception because of their strange configurations of their like nose and ears and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I'm pretty sure that like evolution kind of got it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're hunting, put them both in front. If you're getting hunted, put them both on the side. If you're a lizard, have an invisible one on the top of your head. You know.
What?
Yeah, lizards. They
What?
this is the only part of our podcast that'll ever like cross over in content with Joe Rogan. This is the only time it'll happen. But lizards have
never say never.
Yeah, lizards their pineal gland, which we also have.
Yeah.
And I think ours it's still, even though it's behind your skull, it's still got like the remnants of a lens and a retina in it because it really is an eye in the middle of your forehead.
No.
And in lizards, it's still got attached to a scale that's photosensitive so that they can tell if they're in the shade or not. And they can tell if there's like the shadows of like birds above them because, birds eat lizards. But they use their literal third eye to look at the sun for survival reasons. And we got
Wes.
Yeah, I know.
You for real?
I'm pretty sure that's all real.
Or did you come up with this while you were in Joe Rogan's isolation tank doing frog venom off of his assistant's naked body?
I don't think I'd be invited. I'd probably turn down the invitation too. I'm pretty sure.
You turned it down? I would show up.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man.
It'd be a trip. That would be a trip.
It would be a trip. You know what? Yeah.
I don't know what
it'd be worth
I don't know
the
what
story.
we would talk about.
I'll take the frog venom part. Like the frog venom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm assuming Joe Rogan talked about that. It just seems like the kind of thing he'd talk about, right?
Absolutely. It's got to be.
Yeah. And the more I think about it, is like, is that a true thing that I read, or is that a sample used in a Tool song somewhere? I can't remember. Where were we talking about this? Oh yeah, normal ways of having eyes. That's what brought us here. Yeah.
Oh, thank God you remembered.
Well, that's one of them. So I do like the idea that like probabilistically some of them have like an eye literally on the back of their head sometimes, and like that as a species gives them like better situational awareness.
Yeah. I mean that's easy. Just more eyes is definitely believable, but I have a hard time imagining what that would feel like or look like. Like would you have a hard time processing what having like 3 or 4 eyes? I guess not. Like insects have however many eyes, multifaceted
but it's like,
eyes.
It's really hard to imagine, like, what would it be like if we had like a row of eyes all around, and like from your head you could see in 360, because we can only really see the one way. So I don't know, man. I don't know what it'd be like.
Yeah, I think I'd buy it. I think we've got ears locked down though. Like I think having 2 ears on either side of the head with like the cartilage of the ear kind of poking out so that it can capture some incoming sound and kind of
Yeah.
funnel it into your head. I think we've
Yeah.
got that like locked down. Unless you're going to tell me there's a secret hidden ear just under the skin of like the chest or something
You
that you
don't
can
know about
feel.
the
You
third
can
ear,
feel
man?
bass. You can feel
Yeah.
bass really good.
Oh, that'd be cool. I want a third ear.
Third
Yeah, I
ear.
don't care about a third eye. I want a third ear. I want to. Now the only like better ear I could think of is like the thing snakes do, where they feel vibrations on the ground. You know?
Right, and that's just more of a like a tactile thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. See, Fomorians, they got ears on the bottom of their feet, right? And so that
Yeah.
way they, yeah,
Okay, that's fine. That'll buy. I like that. Ears on the bottom of the feet. Writing that down. Next part of this ruined flesh, evil minds paragraph is greed and evil are at the heart of their degeneration and fall. They make alliances of convenience, but they will break them on a whim. So again, like I said, they're kind of just like all the other uh like drow do this. The what are they called? The Duergar do this. Alliances in the Underdark like never last. And the final paragraph is Curse of the Evil Eye. This is where things definitely diverge from standard giant and or fey origins. Use the Curse of the Evil Eye, they can pass their curse onto others by using a power called the Evil Eye, a vestige of their once remarkable spellcasting ability. Those affected are magically twisted and deformed, gaining a glimpse into the pain and malice that has consumed this evil race. So this translates into an action they can perform where the evil eye attack, it does psychic damage, does a whole bunch, and the save against it is charisma, which is unusual. It's usually a dump stat, so there's a good chance that this will work. And then I think once a day or once per encounter or something, you can also use this evil eye to give the curse of the eye. So not only will it do this damage, but on a failed save, the affected character is deformed, which in game terms means that it has disadvantage and has half movement for at least an hour, and they can do another save after an hour. Other than that, these guys are just big giants with a like bucket of hit points, and they do 2 attacks and they swing a club for a whole bunch of damage. And then they have these evil eye things.
they got that instead of throwing rocks.
Yeah, which I think is a good deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd take the evil eye over
I take
throwing
the evil
rocks.
eye. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it seems like these are good monsters to like they've stolen something like I think to get into their zone, delving into their lair and avoiding them while trying to get around or something. Because
yeah,
they're difficult creatures to fight, and it's the thing about giants, it's always about like setting up a situation where you outsmart them, or like you're not going to win a straight up fight usually. So you have to like sneak around them.
yeah. This would be good. Like, you got captured, and like the mission isn't to like fight them or go in there and grab something. It's like how do you got to break out of jail? You got to sneak out of there. Like that's a good like stealth mission, is getting out of a Fomorian. You know, like you got captured by him.
There's got to be something you can do. Maybe well, let's get into like the origins and etymology and stuff. That might give
Yeah.
better ideas because those. The more I was thinking about it, and what you were saying too, like that's you can all do these with like normal giants,
Oh yeah.
you know. But there's
Yeah.
like, what can we do with their backstory and all that? But let's connect
Yeah.
them with what their source is. So the etymology of the name is debated. There's a lot of uncertainty when we're looking at Old Irish, which is what the Fomorians are from. A lot of uncertainty about the how history connects with myth, and there are all sorts of different versions of myth, and this goes down to the etymology itself. But what we do know is that fo, the first part of it, it means something like below or beneath or nether, and the second part is more unclear. There's an idea that it comes from Old Irish mer, which is sea, so it would be like the undersea ones, the undersea people or whatever. Another suggestion is Old Irish more, and then the more I pronounce Old Irish things, the less accurate I probably am. I know I say this probably every time, but just putting it out there in case this is your first time. I am hopeless, so listen at your own peril. So more means great or big. So it would be like the great underworld ones or the great under ones, or the nether giants. A third suggestion, which is a little more popular, is that there's a hypothetical Old Irish term, which means that there's no consensus on if this is like even based on fact, but there's some evidence that it's the term for a demon or phantom found in the Morrigan, and it's cognate with an archaic English word mare, which survives in nightmare. So then the name would be something like underworld demons or phantoms.
Yeah, the underground nightmare people.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of get into this. They're sort of like they're the powers of chaos. They're latent and hostile to cosmic order. So Fomorians, they're a supernatural race in Irish mythology. They are often portrayed as hostile and monstrous. They were originally said to come from either under the sea or under the earth, and then later on they were portrayed as sea raiders and giants coming from across the ocean from somewhere else. They are mythically the enemies of Ireland's first settlers and opponents of the Tuatha Dé Danann, who are the supernatural race in Irish mythology. So it's kind of like the Olympians and the Titans,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the Aesir and the Vanir as well. Like there's sort of like the more primordial, chaotic, dark, and evil origins of things, and then the Olympians come in, who kind of represent like order and civilization and higher minded thinking, and they take the older gods down. But it gets mixed up in Irish mythology because there's this book of like the invasions of Ireland, where it is a sort of mythical historical record of I think 6 or 7 different peoples coming to Ireland and invading, and uh like there's a pattern of like invading and then wiping out the previous group and then succumbing to plague, and then another one comes and it keeps happening. But in this history, the Fomorians are already there. The first people come and fight them, and then they win, but then they die of plague, and then another group comes, and the Fomorians are there again. And that happens like 2 or 3 times. So the Fomorians seem to have been regarded as malevolent spirits. In one of the earliest references in the 7th century, they're said to dwell under the worlds of men. Their later portrayal as sea raiders was probably influenced by the Viking raids on Ireland that were taking place around that time. They were also often portrayed as monstrous. There's a good image of them too. If you look up Fomorians, there's like they're a pretty like motley crew of like individually grotesque people.
yeah. I'm looking at them right now. That's good. I love the
Yeah,
idea of like almost that like they're living and hiding underground, and then they come out after a civilization collapses from plague. You know, and
yeah,
like they're there the whole time, but then when like a new civilization or like when somebody else comes to invade, colonize the island, settle there, whatever you want, and then it's but every time this like historical cycle, it's sort of like an inverse sort of like peak and trough of like these empires of like people, and then Fomorians like coming out when all the people uh hit a bottleneck.
yeah. They kind of represent the inherent decay of things and like the powers of entropy.
And there's a part of this that kind of reminds me of uh like the mutants in Futurama who live in the sewers, or like this is very like
Like
common.
Morlocks.
Yeah, exactly. Like the sort of post-apocalyptic sci-fi trope of like the underground mutant people.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I didn't think of that, but that's very true. Because often in those, like if you look at the Morlocks or you look at um the Futurama people, there's definitely got to be like earlier versions, but those are the ones sticking to mind now. Like if you look at those, they are all highly individualized as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
They're all mutants in their own unique way, and they're all grotesque usually. And the Fomorians in Irish mythology, they also have relationships with the Tuatha, who are their counterparts. So there's like the Tuatha are sort of like the Olympians. They're the good guys. They're the sort of like mythical Christianized gods, or gods that will become Christianized later, who are in opposition to the Fomorians, but they interbreed as well, because the Fomorians have like made war on the people of Ireland so often, and then exist afterwards, either winning or losing, and then, like it always happens, they mix their blood. So then you have like Irish leaders who are part Fomorian, who are also fighting the Fomorians, and then later on they become pirates and seaborne raiders. And then it just became, so it looks to me like, I'm no expert, but the Fomorians starting off as these like underworld gods, and then getting mixed up in the history of the recolonization or re-inhabitation of Ireland. It starts just becoming like anyone who's already there who you don't like is a Fomorian now.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes pirates and seaborne raiders. So then it's just like anyone you are allowed to hate. You just call someone a Fomorian so that you can feel fine about wiping them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was getting that vibe too.
There's a really good story of, I always mess this up, Cuchulainn. Emily, is that right? Cuchulainn? Yeah, Cuchulainn, who's sort of like the Irish Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn. I thought this was English, god damn it. Cuchulainn is a Irish hero. He's probably like the Irish hero. He's the what? Yeah, he's Irish Hercules. He's Irish Achilles. He's the Irish Brad Pitt. And there's a really good story that I'll relate here about Fomorians. Cuchulainn went and looked forth on the great sea. As he was there, he beheld a great assembly on the strand nearest to him, to wit, 100 men and 100 women seated in the bosom of the haven and the shore, and among them a maiden shapely, dear and beautiful, the most distinguished damsel of the world's women, and they a-weeping and lamenting around the damsel. Cuchulainn came to the place and saluted them. "What is this sorrow or the misery upon you?" says Cuchulainn. The damsel answered, and this she said: "A royal tribute which the tribe of Fomorians carry out of this country every 7th year, namely, the firstborn of the king's children. And at this time it has come to me to go as that tribute. For to the king I am the dearest of his children." "What number comes to lift that tribute?" asks Cuchulainn. 3 sons of Elantrum of the Fomorians, she answers, and Dub, Mel, and Dubrose are their names. Not long had they been at those talks when they saw the well-manned, full great vessel approaching them over the furious waves of the sea. And when the damsel's people saw the ship coming, they all fled from her, and not a single person remained in her company save only Cuchulainn. And thus was that vessel, a single warrior, dark, gloomy, devilish, on the stern of that good ship, and he was laughing roughly, ill-fatedly, so that everyone saw his entrails and his bowels through the body of his gullet. "What is that mirthfulness on the big man?" asks Cuchulainn. "Because," says the damsel, "he deems it excellent that thou shouldst be an addition to this tribute in this year rather than any other year." "By my conscience," says Cuchulainn, "it would not be right for him to brag thus regarding me if he knew what would come of it. Then the big man came ashore to them into the strand, and stretched forth his long, sinewy, hideous arm to seize Cuchulainn in the very front of his royal tribute. Straightway Cuchulainn raised his right hand and bared his sword, and gave a blow to that big man and struck off his head, so that he was the first that fell by Cuchulainn after having completed his training. And thereafter the other two fell by him, and he left them thus, neck to neck. So this doesn't really speak to the danger of Fomorians, but it's a cool story.
It's a cool story. I mean, I love the image of like this guy, and like you can see his guts, and he's like, "Yeah, thank you. You're gonna be part of the tribute too, right?"
Yeah. Yeah, he's like brandishing his intestines.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
them.
Unbeknownst to him that he was talking to, a 20th level fighter, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. And this is based on in one of the invasions of Ireland. The people came, they fought the Fomorians and won, but then they succumbed to plague. And then the Fomorians took them over and enslaved them. Sorry, not enslaved them, but demanded like 2/3 of their children and their crops. And this went on for a while until they overthrew the Fomorians. So there's like they're still smarting from that, I think. I have also a list of notable Fomorians because there is some arguments in the mythical rendering of things to trace their lineage back to Noah.
Back to Noah. Interesting.
Yeah, which is a whole like wing of research I decided not to go down. But
whoa,
yeah, there's a lot of named ones, and I skipped a bunch of them, but I tried to pick ones that had kind of immediately gameable or immediately relevant biographies going on here that might shed some light on the D&D monster. So first we have Kikol or Kichol. It's usually not pronounced exactly how it's spelled in these old Irish things. So I'm going to say Kikol is the earliest mentioned leader of the Fomorians. His epithet is obscure. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it might be translated as clapper leg or withered feet or of withered feet. So that's his last name is like Griankos or Grianchos or Grigan Chosak. So he might be Chikol of withered feet.
He's got too many years on his feet. Can't walk on it normal.
He's got a half movement on there.
Yeah.
Which is contrasted to the Fomorian we had standing on the prow of the ship, who's dark, gloomy, devilish, laughing roughly. So then we kind of see where the idea for like Fomorians being originally beautiful, and some of these are actually explicitly like golden haired and supernaturally beautiful, but they also have names like Clapperleg.
I'm looking at one of these like motley crews of Fomorian images you mentioned before.
Yeah.
I like that one of them is just a fish man.
Yeah.
That's real good. Standing right in front of
anything goes.
Karl Marx, it looks like.
Yeah. Another vile monster. So then there's Conad Mac Fibir imposed a heavy tax on the clan of Namid. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. This is the guy. So he demands 2/3 of their wheat, their milk, and their offspring, which were due every Samhain at the plain called Mag Centene. The oppressed attacked from the sea with a host of 30,000 headed by 3 champions, grandsons and great-grandsons of Nemed, who was the original leader of the people that came to Ireland in this wave. And they overcame Conand and his host of 30,000 at a place called Conand's Tower, later called Torinus Setne. And then Mork Macdalad, who is Conad's brother, later arrived with a fleet of 60 ships to retake the tower from the people of Nemed, and a mutual annihilation ensued, forcing the Nemedian folk into diaspora out of Ireland. So yeah, this was like the second or third of the invasions of Ireland. So like it keeps happening one way or another. People just arrive in Ireland, they fight Fomorians, and then are annihilated one way or another. Then we have one of the few female Fomorians, one of the ladies, who is, of course, most notable for being the daughter of a more important Fomorian. Uh, this this person's name is Ethnu. Baelor, in an attempt to avoid a druid's prophecy that he will be killed by his own grandson, imprisons Ethnu, who is his daughter, in a tower on Tory Island, away from all contact with men. But a guy whose first name is Mac, a magical cow, Baelor steals. Using that, he gains access to Ethnu's tower with the magical help of, I think, a druid, and seduces her. Ethnu gives birth to triplets, but Baelor gathers them up in a sheet and sends a messenger to drown them in a whirlpool. The messenger drowns 2 of the babies, but unwittingly drops one in the harbor, where he is rescued by someone named Birog. She takes the child back to his father, who gives him to his brother, Gavita the Smith, in Fosterage. The boy grows up to kill Baelor, and that boy is, I think, named Lug or Lug, and he's one of the the good gods. He's one of the Olympian style gods who is he's kind of like a good guy Zeus. I don't think he has any of the weird like pretending to be a swan to have sex with women things. He wasn't running around his like wife's back all the time.
Yeah, that was most of what Zeus was up to.
Yeah, but he also, you know, he had like more kind of I imagine he had more important things he should be doing. Lug is someone who actually takes his job seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Lug either gave not birth. Lug either fathered Cuchulainn, or Cuchulainn is another incarnation of Lug, who is Baelor's grandson. And before we get into Baelor, who is the most important Fomorian, especially for our purposes, there's one more named Tethra, and all that can be said about Tethra is that his name might be derived from a Proto-Indo-European language meaning quacking sound. Tethra could also mean like the sea, or a scald crow, or Roinston's crow, which is a type of crow. So there you get quacking sound. That makes more sense. Why a Fomorian would be named Quacking Sound? I don't know. Could have a beak instead of a mouth. So now we get to Baelor. And Baelor, besides what I told you, which is a great fairy tale story, it should be noted that the weapon used against Baelor was a red-hot heated iron rod stabbed into his eyes. Now we get into Baelor's eye. There's a reason he stabbed it. Baelor himself may have had 1, 2, or 3 eyes, one of which is poisonous, incendiary, or otherwise malignant. Depending on whatever story you get it from, he may have had 2 eyes in front, or 1 each in front and back, and an extra eye in the middle of his forehead. But in almost every story, Lug puts the whatever is the most dangerous eye, whatever has the magic power, he always stabs it with something. In one version of the tale, he has 1 eye in the middle of his forehead and the deadly eye in the back of his head, and it is venomous and issues some sort of petrifying beam with powers like a basilisk. There could be cross-pollination with the story of the Cyclops, especially being on Tory Island. The Cyclops was on a specific island. In one of the stories, Baelor covers the eye in the middle of his forehead with 9 leather shields, but Lug sends a red spear through all of the layers. Another version says that Bael was one-eyed, but he always covered it. He had a single eye in his forehead, a venomous, fiery eye. There's always 7 coverings over his eye. One by one, Baelar removed the coverings. With the first covering, the bracken began to wither. With the second, the grass became copper-colored. With the third, the woods and timber began to heat. With the fourth, smoke came from the trees. With the fifth, everything grew red. With the sixth, it sparked. With the seventh, they were all set on fire, and the whole countryside was ablaze.
See, right away, that has the makings for a really sick encounter with like a Fomorian leader, like a king or some powerful one, and they have their eyes covered with 7 coverings, and each round they remove one, and like another crazy thing happens, like following that pattern.
Yeah, that works really well on several levers, or
Yeah,
sorry, several levels, because that could be, like you just said, like an encounter thing, where each time a cover is removed, something horrible happens, and maybe you have to get through all of the coverings in order to get at the eye underneath.
yeah,
So then you have to risk suffering another layer, or it could also be like a longer term campaign thing where, because these sound like apocalyptic,
yeah, totally, totally.
like these are like the 7 seals, you know,
Yeah,
where things not just in the room you're in or things in the combat, it's like things like like cosmically, globally are happening every time one of these coverings comes off.
yeah,
And then you could get into a more detailed like Fomorian drama where you would have maybe some of the people from the Feywild that were originally against them trying to like, I guess it would actually be the Fomorians reinvading the Feywild if you're going to go and like kind of copy the Irish invasion idea. It's like the Fomorians are under the surface, they're underground, and then they spring up to try and take civilization back down.
hmm,
They're like the twisted mirror of civilization. Something about after he was slain, Baelor's severed head was set in the fork of an oak, and the tree which absorbed the venom became the timber wood that was made into a shield for another Irish hero. So that's pretty cool.
that's really fucking cool. Yeah,
Head venom making a shield.
yeah, totally. I was gonna say the idea of venomous eyes is
Oh, venomous eyes is good too.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's real good. Yeah. Um, but yeah, the shield, like a shield made of the wood from a tree, that the severed head. That's yeah, that's cool. That's good. That's good stuff.
And then another version of the story, Lug sets Baelor's head on a rock, and a lake forms from the dripping pool of blood, which is pretty metal.
Oh yeah, just the head won't stop bleeding. That's cool.
Which is yeah, that's a good location to set.
Yeah. Oh man, a river of blood coming from a single severed head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another version where Baelor was said to have a glass through which he would look to destroy a person with his eye. He used the glass to burn and wither all of the plants in this place called Moitura, which prompted a hero to ask how he did this. Baelor, being duped by the trick of this hero, removed the glass from his eye long enough for the hero to put the eye out. And then the blood running from that eye created a lake called the Lake of the Eye, which is a real place near Ballindoon Abbey, which of course that's one of the things I love about Irish and English folklore is like this insane thing happens and it's near like a real place you can look up.
Yeah. Yeah. Often like just sort of like down the road from like a very mundane sort of thing. Like it's like there's still streets where these
Yeah.
insane things
Like
happen.
you can
Yeah.
look up and it's got a name like Ballindoon Abbey, and you look it up on Wikipedia, and it's just like a sheep devoured grass flatland with like some rocks sticking out. That's probably a building, and that's what Ireland looks like.
Yeah.
There's also on Tory Island, where all this was said to take place, there's a geological feature as a couple actually. There's Baelor's Fortress and Baelor's Tower, and a rock formation somewhere else called Great Tower, which might also be a part of the other Fomorian I was talking about that had the 30,000 versus the other 30,000, because they had a tower by the sea, and that's where all the action took place. So there we get the most direct relation to D&D Fomorians. So I think with these, I don't know. I think it makes more sense to have not every Fomorian has this evil eye power because it seems like it's kind of more special if it's a named like warlord
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
or not. I mean, I'm trying to think of it. I'm trying to think of how an actual player group would go into it. Like whenever there's something to do with eye powers, you get into weird situations where players want to cover their characters' eyes with blindfolds, but still like get around, and then you have to kind of devise an improvised system of like, okay, I guess you can still do this, but how difficult is it? Do you just make
Yeah.
them like have disadvantage? Like, do you make them not able to know where they're?
Yeah. It's a similar thing that you get into because I guess you would just give them all the blinded condition, right? But you get into this weird thing. It's like fighting invisible opponents. It's like, do you like have to guess what square they're on? It
Yeah,
kind of implies that you have to do that, but you don't really do that. Like I don't know, or do you just take advantage? It sort of gives you both options.
yeah.
So it gets weird. Yeah.
And you get some players are like, well, I can just fight him. I just won't look at his eyes. And you're
Yeah.
like,
Totally.
okay, but how do you like? You have to argue and like and adjudicate this.
Yeah.
So if you make it more of a mythical thing, I mean, it's a good power. Like you don't want to lose the power, and if you don't have the eye, then they're just literally stat wise, they're just giants. So what makes them special, besides the setting and the mood? So they might need something, but
Yeah. And like if you're gonna like have them all do it, I don't know, it might be like a cool like sort of weird move to make it like okay, you're fighting these giants, and they're like I don't know, they're sort of they're not the same as other giants. They're shaped differently, and then at some point they start revealing that they all have giant eyeballs on their chests. You know, they all look different except that they have this one specific thing, and
oh yeah,
that's where it comes from. You could do something else with it. But I do like the idea of it being um like the evil eye ability being special, you know?
yeah, because Baelor is like he's like a war chief,
Yeah.
and especially if you want to play up the like you could have an ongoing fight still with like maybe like an elf kingdom. The Fomorians are still there trying to retake what they think is theirs, but they're corrupt, and they do one thing they don't mention in this is that I think the Fomorians should be doing like surface raids. I guess
Yeah.
I don't know. They already like other underground dwellers do that too, but Fomorians seem like they'd have the most reason to
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
because they have such a grudge against the people, the
Yeah.
Fey people. I don't know what you call the Fey people.
Like the Eladrins, like the there's the different courts, you know?
Yeah,
But I guess like the Fae in general.
the Fey works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's some other thought. Some people have interpreted Baelor as personifying the harmful aspects of the sun, such as the scorching sun that would bring crop failure and drought, and that Lug's slaying of Baelor was originally a harvest myth associated with harvest festivals.
Shit. Well, it would be cool for like the lord of an underdark kingdom to have power that reflects the harm that the sun can do in like a sunless empire. I don't know. There's
Yeah, that's
something there.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you want them to be mirrored versions, like it's kind of fun to think of them as like the Drow are already kind of inverted versions of elves, but I think they're actually just kind of like the decadence and haughtiness of elves taken to an extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you have like a more kind of primordial mirror version of things, then you'd have like anti harvest, anti crops,
So
just
you
monsters
like
that
the
want to.
sun, do you, surface dweller?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Uh yeah, and they're in the Underdark, but they're at war with the Fae. So they were cast out of the Fae Wild into the Underdark, like in back in like the
Yeah,
D&D. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
You could also, I mean, like you can change all kinds of these things, but I don't know. I'm sure like the Underdark, there's portals between the Underdark and like all kinds of places, but like you could also just have them be that's who's underground in the Feywild. Like you have all the the Jim Henson puppet like I always imagine the Feywild looking like a dark crystal when they're going
Yeah.
through the woods in dark crystal. Like everything's alive. There's like an abundance of weird magical life. You like pick up a flower and it's like, hey, how's it going? You're cursed now, and you know that kind
Come in
of.
and have tea with the missus.
It's like you find like just like a fully like a banquet on a table in the middle of the woods, and just not to eat it. All the kind of Feywild nonsense. But if you go underground, if you hang out in caves and dig underground, there is this society, this massive empire of mutant giants. Like it's stark contrast to the rest of the Feywild, and that then you have the sort of geography of it being like, yeah, on the surface it's like all wacky and whimsical, but like underneath it's like real dark and messed up. You know,
Yeah,
there's
it's
something
just
to
as
do.
whimsical, but it's like uh it's explicitly dark. It's not just like ambiguous like it can
Yeah,
be sometimes.
yeah. And also, I don't know. I just like the idea of like being underground in the Feywild is like you are really far from home. Like this is a weird place now.
Yeah, well then you get into the thing about you have to give it a dumb name. Like there's the what was it? The Shadow Dark.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
remember
right.
this
Oh,
when they were first coming up with like all of these explicitly different kind of zones to be in, like the
oh,
Feywild,
Shadowfell, right? The
the
Shadowfell.
Shadow. Yeah, so they came up with the
Yeah,
Shadowfell, which was like kind of a uh, to me a kind of shaky idea to begin with. It's just kind of like, if I have it right, it's kind of like a ghostly kind of purgatorial version of reality of the material
yeah.
plane. But then if you go into the Underdark in the Shadowfell, it's called the Shadow Dark, which then really exposes the bloat of the whole system. So then you
Yeah.
have, if we're doing this, then you have the Feywild, and then you have to go underground in the Feywild, and then you have to call that something stupid.
Yeah, the Underwild.
The Shadow Wild,
The
Underwild.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever you want to call it, as long maybe if you don't draw attention to it, it could still work. What I liked about what you were saying is that it's the Fomorians really set off when you put them up against what other Fae are like. I think you kind of need the contrast. You could maybe populate Fomorian territory with like Fae prisoners and slaves and more twisted ideas of what you would typically think of, like what would like a pool full of nymphs look like in a Fomorian world, or like a bunch of
Yeah.
gross giants like bathing probably or something, like
Yeah, like what are like Fomorian like sprites and like
yeah,
little
just
little
doing
face
really
spirits like
really
that.
mean spirited versions of
Yeah.
what your typical like fairy deviant art scenes would look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can have using the history of the Irish invasions, you can have, there's like all kinds of like skirmishes you can get involved in to take territory or land. Or then we also have like captured children. There's lots of like oppressed people having to give up their children. And then you have specific fairy tale logic where somebody becomes obsessed with the prophecy that they try to avoid. So they
Yeah.
like capture their own daughter and their own grandchildren, and you can intercept it one way or another. Like you could be sent to go intercept the messenger of this Fomorian warlord and get the babies back, and then you have to like do something with the babies to achieve their, if they're going to kill their grandfather, you have to like help them do that somehow, or just like
Yeah.
put the spear in the baby's hand and then hold the baby's hand and use the spear and try to force it.
Yeah. I was thinking about the evil eye aspect of it. Um and let me getting this right. Do you know about the Nazar style of amulet in jewelry? It's like a bunch of like blue and white circles that look like an eye together, right?
Okay.
And yeah, yeah, you see them. They're you will always like any non-chain jewelry store, like any jewelry store that's owned by an independent jeweler, they're gonna have these everywhere.
This is
Um,
another weird area of expertise for you.
yeah, it is another weird one. And so we had them in the jewelry store I used to work at, and like in the movie, Uncut Gems. They're all
Yeah.
over his shop too, and that was one moment where I was like, they got this right. But the cool thing about them is it is like all over the world where this exact piece of jewelry is like has been used as the thing. Like it's the same word Nazar in Azerbaijani, Bengali, Hebrew, Hindi, Kurdish, Pashto, Persian, Punjabi, Turkish, and Urdu. Uh, like Nazar. And so it's like all over the place, and like it's just it wards off, you know, evil spirits, evil energy. So that's why, yeah, it's a pretty common thing. So
Oh, this
I don't
thing.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that thing you see that thing
Yeah.
everywhere. Once you know what it is, you see it
Yeah.
everywhere, and so that's to ward off evil energy, right? And so I like to think
Yeah.
people who would be subject on the surface to uh raids from Fomorians, like this would be like an important thing to have around to like protect you from the energy of their like weird eyeballs. You know, like you could totally have that kind of thing. I don't know. It was just hard for me not to.
No, this is worth mentioning for sure. There could be quests involved in getting this or making this. You could be dealing with somebody like counterfeiting them
Oh man,
and using
counterfeit
them.
Nazars everywhere, and so the Fomorians can get in because they're not real.
Yeah, like the Fomorians maybe like flood a market with
Oh
fake Nazar.
yeah,
You discover that they're not real. That would be fun. I like that a
yeah.
lot.
Or working in reverse and like amplifying the evil eye energy.
Yeah, and they don't even like me. Yeah, maybe there's no the people wearing them don't even are aware of that there's any evil eye stuff going on, but they are secretly being infiltrated.
Yeah,
You can also have rather than the evil eye giving this curse and like you get to save every hour and then it goes away. You could have like, you know, a typical thing of like a monarch who's been affected by the curse and he's slowly deforming and turning grotesque, but he needs the curse reversed somehow, so he sends the PCs to go deal with it.
yeah, yeah,
I also, you know, play with the idea of deformity causing evil eye to like not be reversible.
yeah. Like
You don't want to like
yeah,
just totally mess up a player's like character forever necessarily, but depending on the game, maybe not fifth edition, but like I know older editions of D&D like wouldn't think twice.
yeah, or like maybe I don't know. You could have it be like a thing like no, this is you. Once it gets used on you, you gotta like use greater restoration to fix it. Like that's a
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta
You have
find
to
somebody who can do that or like get powerful enough to do that. You know, like there's a way out, but like
yeah, there's a way out, but you have to work for it.
yeah,
Or you have to pass the curse on to someone else. That's a good curse. I like a curse just
yeah,
not being removable easily. Like you have to there's no undoing a curse. You can only like pass it on or dissipate it through something
yeah,
else.
or like
It
there
never
has to be
really
some
goes
kind of
away.
equivalent exchange. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's no I don't know, like curses are sort of like matter and energy. Like maybe there's a certain level of like curse that's in the universe, and all you can really do is shuffle the curse around.
Yeah, so the trick is to find like an acceptable receptacle for the curse.
Yeah,
Or you could do the easy way and just give it to like the first farmer you see.
yeah. Oh man, and maybe that's why one reason why whatever I don't know. I'm imagining it being like a very powerful like fae, like some kind of archfey, like an Eladrin master wizard or somebody who like levied the curse on the Fomorians. Maybe that was like we need uh to store all of this curse energy somewhere. So like let's these guys keep invading us. Let's curse them because we got to put all this curse somewhere.
Oh yeah, what if the Fomorians, what if they weren't actually inherently evil to begin with?
Yeah. What if the curse made them evil? It's part of the curse,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
like
Yeah.
the elves or whoever, it says the elves in the Fomorian text. Remember when the Fomorians were beautiful. I
Yeah.
keep thinking of them as the main enemy, but they don't have to
Yeah.
be. But
We're
anyways,
told the
maybe
story that
yeah.
the Fomorians were cursed because so their outsides could match their insides, but really the elves just had a bunch of magical radioactive waste essentially. They offloaded it and then spread the story that the Fomorians was like, no, 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 they're like that because
No.
they deserved it.
Yeah. They're
Yeah,
rotten on the inside. They got what they deserved.
yeah.
Yeah,
But,
we just wrote a way more 2022 version.
And like that's I don't know, I love that kind of elf stuff where it's like, yeah, they're like all noble and beautiful and aesthetic and everything, but like I kind of like it when like way in the ancient history, thousands of years ago, these like people that could live like nearly infinite, well, live extremely long lives and like had all of this power, like they got up to some like dark
Yeah.
stuff.
They used to be assholes.
Yeah.
People can change, but
Yeah.
they used to be assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the angle I would take. The Fomorians were originally fine. Elves are to blame, as usual. And now you have to figure out what to do with these curses. You have to pass them down the line.
Yeah.
Or store them in one of these evil eye beads or something.
Yeah. Gotta launch it into space.
Yeah, throw it down a hole.
Yeah.
Fomorians in previous edition, there's not much to talk about, I don't think. They showed up in Monster Manual 2 in AD&D, and they came up, they've been in every edition since, but until 4th edition, they were just underground giants, basically. They had some of the same rules. They couldn't throw rocks. They were deformed, they had altered senses, but they didn't have any of the backstory. They were just kind of underground dwellers. And then in 4th edition, they were given this society, this depraved slave culture. And then in 5th edition, it kind of ties it back in with their conflict with other mythical creatures, which I think is the best way to do it, because you have there are tons of other underground dwelling brutes. There's lots of other slave taking malicious species. But what we don't have is like this kind of fateful curse that makes them actually, especially if you use the change we just came up with, that little tweak makes them more sympathetic and interesting.
Yeah.
So we did it. We solved this monster.
We did it. Yeah.
Next. What's next? Oh, it's the fungus people. What are they called?
Oh yeah.
Is it just fungus? I don't have the book in front of me for some reason, but I remember the page. These are like the fungoid people. I'll look it up. Are you furiously? It sounds like you're.
Yeah, I'm scrolling
you're deep
down
in
on my
it
app
right
because Carl's got my monster manual.
It's also kind of funny that the Baelor is the name of a demon.
Yeah.
But it's got nothing to do with the Rulers Generals. Yeah, so they're just like, oh yeah, they're the Balrog. They're the not Balrog.
Yeah. Wait, what is the next one? The Galeb Doer? Is that it?
The what?
Because
no, we're not in...
Myconids are the mushroom people, aren't they?
Oh, there's something. I think it's just fungus. I'm getting there. I've got my online version that makes a very loud sound every time I turn the page. Yeah, fungi, gas spores, shriekers, and violet fungus. Yeah, coming up next.
Sweet. All right.
Fungus, just like the bottom of the barrel of every dungeon.
Oh man,
the substrate of adventure itself.
I don't know. Mushrooms are cool. I'm excited to talk about mushrooms. Mushrooms are cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm betting
there.
You've got lots to say.
Gonna coming in hot with mushroom facts next time on Monster Manual Mash.
Say the thing.
Monsters out of here.
Monster Manual Mash is Christopher Lawson and Wes Grist. Edited by me, Chris Lawson. Find me on Twitter at Chris M. Lawson. Music by Wes, aka Elias. You can find more of his music on bandcamp.com/Elias. That's numeral 0 LIAS. It's not a hacker thing, it's just what was available. Thanks to Sarah B. Milner for our logo. You can find her editing for /film and on Twitter at Sarah B. Milner. Thanks to everyone listening and to everyone talking monsters on the Monster Manual Mash Facebook group. Monsters to you.